evening and welcome to FSR's first ever laughter yoga event. I'm Angela Freelander, Director of Development for FSR, and we are so grateful for you all to be here tonight to come together during April's Sarcoidosis Awareness Month to learn more about laughter yoga and how it may be helpful for you on your journey. Before we get started, I would like to share a quick bit of housekeeping. We would like to kindly ask everyone to remain on mute throughout the presentation. Following the presentation, you are welcome to participate in the laughter yoga session by turning on your camera and unmuting yourself. Feel free to utilize the chat function, but please note that we will be using the Q&A portion to answer your questions. As a reminder, the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research recommends that you speak to your doctor before participating in any activity that could exacerbate your sarcoidosis symptoms. Laughter yoga functions like an exercise program. This session is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. No information in this video is to be taken as medical or health advice. By participating in this program, you agree to release FSR and any speakers of any and all liability and responsibility from any and all losses, liability of injuries or damages. You agree to participate in this event at your own risk, and please listen to your body. Seek medical advice if you have any concerns about your individual medical needs. Tonight's event will be led by Laura McCook, a certified laughter yoga leader that enjoys sharing tools that have helped her navigate difficult life experiences. After years of managing a worsening chronic illness, she left the corporate world to focus on her own well-being, including through laughter yoga. Throughout her healing process, Laura chose to explore her creative energy by learning to play the guitar and piano, which she practices regularly. She also loves cooking, organic edible and butterfly gardening, and volunteering with a local cat rescue organization. Today, Laura lives a healthy whole life and has a passion for teaching others that joy that is accessible even when facing challenges. Finally, I do want to thank our sponsor for tonight's event. If I can just share my screen really quick. Be great. Tonight's event is sponsored by Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals, so we are so grateful to them for allowing this, for making today's event possible. Stop sharing, and we have a full event, so I am going to turn it over to Laura.
Fantastic. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited to get to speak with everyone today. My name is Laura McCook, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. We'll dive into some of the history of laughter yoga, some of the science behind it, and some what, where, who, and why for the first 30 minutes. And then we will go through a 20-minute gentle session. Some of you may have done laughter yoga. Some of you may have never done laughter yoga. And as Angela mentioned, it does function. It is like an exercise program. So if you've never done it, I would never say, hey, you've been sitting on the couch for 2 years. Let's get up and take a 5-mile jog. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to do a nice, gentle session. But I did want to do some quick housekeeping first. And if you go in the upper right-hand corner of your view, this will probably best be viewed if you select the speaker view. So you'll get to see my presentation and then my floating head off into a corner somewhere, but you're welcome to keep it in gallery view, but the presentation will be teeny tiny and you may not be able to read it. And of course, you can change it as you feel necessary. So to get started, we will have Q&A at the end. I'll try to save about 10 minutes at the end to have Q&A. If you don't mind fielding your questions in the chat directly to Angela, if you don't know how to do that and you accidentally send it to everyone, no worries. I was just going to try and prevent that from popping up while I was sharing, but things happen and we all forget. So it's okay if that does not happen. So Angela will be fielding that Q&A at the very end. So a little bit about me. So why am I the one here talking to you today? Well, as Angela mentioned in my bio, I did go through a chronic condition in 2014. My life changed dramatically. Things just had been building up for a number of years. And in 2014, it got to a point where I had to quit my robust career. I had my mother move in with me at the age of 34 to help me care for myself for about a year. It was challenging. It was scary. It was devastating. I know what it is like to feel terrified. I know what it's like to feel mental, physical, and emotional discomfort. I know what it's like to live in survival mode. And I know what it's like to feel complete isolation. I was mostly homebound for several years. I was diagnosed with toxic encephalopathy, secondary to environmental toxic mold exposure, along with some stress-related conditions, dysautonomia. The list of diagnoses, I think, was probably around 24, but I try not to go back and revisit that. I've never actually counted, but I did spend a lot of time doing different modalities to not only boost my physical well-being, but my mental and emotional well-being, which was very difficult to do at the time. So with that said, I hope that I can bring some light to you today to say that I know what it's like. I may not have been diagnosed with exactly the things that you have gone through, but I do understand the mental, the emotional, and physical challenges very, very well. And there's a tool. There are more tools than there are stars in the sky. And laughter yoga was just one tool that I used that was very, very helpful. And it's a really darn good one. Of course, I wouldn't be here talking to you about it if it wasn't. But it's one that I believe in and that I hope that will serve you not only through this challenge, but through anything that comes your way, because life happens to everyone and we could all use more tools. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And let me see here. Let me share my screen with all of you. All right, perfect. I've got my screen up, and if there's anything, if people can't hear anything and there's anything that needs to be done, Angela, feel free to interrupt me if people are having any difficulty with audio visual from me. All right, so what is laughter yoga? Okay, so laughter yoga was originally started in the mid 1990s. It's 1995 by this man here on screen, Dr. Manan Kataria. He's an Indian medical doctor, and he read about a lot of the benefits of laughter and laughter therapy. So him and his wife and 3 gentlemen that were friends of theirs got together in a park. And thus the first laughter club was born. They started by telling jokes. They came in with funny jokes. They'd laugh and they would tell several, because he knew that the research was showing that laughter needed to be sustained for a period of time. And after a while, the jokes, they just weren't funny anymore. They'd worn out their usefulness. So they started getting more crude and more vulgar. And eventually nobody found the jokes funny and most people were getting offended. So he knew something needed to change. So he started developing laughter exercises. So simply stated, laughter yoga is laughter for the sake of laughter. It is unconditional laughter. It doesn't depend on jokes. We don't rely on anything funny or comedic, though funny things happen during laughter yoga. But we also do yogic breathing exercises. And I don't want the term yogic breathing to put you off if that's something that's not for you. Really, it's conscious breathing. So if I take in a deep breath, I was mindful about it. I was consciously aware of my breathing. I can control the inhale, nice slow exhale, and have an effect on my parasympathetic nervous system to help calm down if things are chaotic out here. So yogic breathing is really just conscious breathing exercises. So there's absolutely nothing mysterious about it. What's very powerful about laughter yoga is that you only need yourself. You can be sitting in complete chaos and do laughter yoga. I have done it. It is not always easy, but in time it gets easier. You don't need to rely on anything. The power is within you. And I think that is a very beautiful thing, because it doesn't matter what's going on. You can still do it. Laughter yoga does need to be sustained. The researched benefits are reported to have the best effect when done for 10 to 15 minutes daily. Now, that's researched benefits, and it's okay if, especially getting started, you're thinking, oh my gosh, 10 to 15 minutes. Getting started, you may only do 1 minute. And it doesn't mean that there's absolutely no benefit to doing a minute of laughter, because I know I feel better if I laugh for a minute, but the research benefits have been shown at a minimum of 10 minutes, up to 15 minutes for some. And laughter yoga finally is a conscious choice. I've heard people describe laughter yoga as, just fake it till you make it. It's not that the term is wrong. I just don't prefer that term. Fake implies kind of a level of not being genuine, and you're not really faking laughter. You don't have to feel it to do it. You just participate in the exercises, and oftentimes you experience a shift during a session. You may not, and that's okay. But you're actively choosing to step in and do the practice, which to me isn't fake. It is a conscious choice. I am knowing right now that I'm not really feeling very centered, and I'm going to step in and do laughter yoga. That's a conscious choice to face in the healthy direction. All right, so what happens in a session? Well, a session, it's very similar, almost identical in a way to what you would do in a workout session. You're going to start with a warm-up. There's Dr. Kataria there in a live laughter yoga session over in India. The most famous exercise in laughter yoga, which I'm going to demonstrate right now for you, is clapping, and we have a mantra, and it is done at a cadence, palms open. And if you want to try this with me, go right ahead. We're going to clap our hands to a cadence of 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Now we're clapping because we're activating some acupressure points. Acupressure points exist all over the body, but in particular in the ears, the hands, and the feet. And so we're clapping, and we're going to say ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. Ho, ho, ha, ha, ha. And I end each exercise by saying, very good, arms up in the air. Yay! Let's try that. Very good. Yay! Now that seems silly. Most likely, if you've never seen laughter yoga, it seems silly, and it's supposed to be. That very good, yay, is bringing in a childlike level of playfulness, which as adults is easy to forget. So I like to incorporate that at the end of all of my laughter yoga exercises during a session to just give a signal that, okay, we're done with this and we're moving on to the next. But of course, you can just walk around the house doing that and confuse your family and friends. I know that I do. So we warm up through various exercises that tend to be gentle to get you prepared to move in to the laughter exercises, which include all sorts of laughter and breathing exercises. And of course, they can be up here. And by up here, I mean they can be very energetic and intense exercises, but it doesn't have to be. So if you've ever watched a laughter yoga video and thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Laughter exercises can be done extremely gently, that you can go at your own pace. And there's absolutely no reason it has to be adrenaline fueled. It can very much be very soothing, gentle experience and still get the benefits of laughter and the breathing exercises. There's also, towards the end of a session, a timed it's called a laughter meditation or a laughter flow, terms used interchangeably, which is basically just timed continuous laughter. Sure, you can use some of the exercises you've learned during this time, but usually I'd set a timer for 1 to 5 minutes. I've seen them go as long as 15 minutes. I typically don't go that long, but 1 to 5 minutes where you can either sit in the group and try and let laughter arise naturally, or just ha 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 ha, he 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 he, ho 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 ho, whatever you feel like doing. And it will just be a timed exercise, no formality needed as far as the exercises go. And then ending with a cool down. So you've got the warm up, the exercises, and then a cool down. Looks very similar to a workout if you were going into the gym. And the cool downs are done very differently. I use Yoga Nidra, which is a form of mindful body awareness where you'd focus on a specific part of the body and focus on consciously relaxing it, or through visualization, which is another favorite of mine. And we can go to the beach, we can go to the mountains and just help calm that energy down that we generated in the session. The length of sessions vary. They can go over 60 minutes. I don't see a lot of sessions going that long, but again, the minimum only needs to be 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, and you get the research benefits. So I keep talking about the research benefits, and I want to talk to you about the science. Now, it's wonderful to know the science, to know, hey, this is something that's been researched. It's something that works. This isn't complete snake oil. People have looked into it, but I have another intention for sharing the science with you. Oftentimes, when you start something new and different, as likely everyone has experienced in life, putting new habits into your day is hard. If change were easy, I think everyone would do it. And sometimes we try and we fall off the wagon, and we get back on and we fall off, and that's okay. But what I found can be helpful for a lot of people. If you have resistance to starting a program and your mind is saying, oh, I don't want to do this. Oh, this isn't going to work. You can say to yourself, which is, a part of your brain resistant to change. You can say, okay, I hear you, but the science says, the science says that, this really helps with XYZ, and this is really good for me. And you know what? I hear you, but we're going to go ahead and do that. That can be a really effective reframe if you're feeling a lack of motivation, or if you're just feeling resistance. Now, it's very different from waking up and saying, wow, physically, I just don't feel like this is for me today. That is something that is not something you want to counteract, because obviously listen to your body, but it's that little la, 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 in the back of your mind that tells you can't do it, or it's no good. That's when you pull this out and say, I remember that Laura gal said something about science and how good it was. So that's why I share this with you. And I'm going to share the top 4 reasons that laughter yoga is really good for you and what it's been studied for. And the first is for stress relief. There has been a lot of medical literature done on stress relief. The study that I have charts here on the right was done over in India, and it was done on IT professionals, and it was a workplace study, and just 18 IT professionals that had never done laughter yoga before. They didn't have any pre-existing conditions, no high blood pressure, diabetes. They were screened for all sorts of things. They were on no medication. So pretty healthy individuals as far as the medical literature would go. And they did 7 sessions over 18 days. Now, it's interesting because they didn't even do a session every day. They did a session about every 2 to 3 days. And the results were quite surprising to researchers and dramatic. They showed a decrease in the resting heart rate in the laughter yoga group, and the cortisol decreased significantly. It decreased in both groups. I'm not really sure why. Maybe they were all stressed at the time of the study, but it decreased much more significantly in the laughter yoga group. Blood pressure was decreased, as well as perceived stress. Now, that's very important, because a lot of times what stresses out me may not stress out you. I don't find going to the dentist particularly stressful, but my husband really does. So the perception, the way we view stress is incredibly important, and it's a subjective measure, and it's an important one. So perceived stress was decreased. There was also a chemotherapy study done on stress relief in 2014 in Iran, where they had patients receiving chemotherapy treatments in the hospitals do a laughter yoga session before receiving their chemotherapy treatment. And they noted similar benefits as this workplace study. They found that the individuals were much less stressed during their chemotherapy treatments than they were prior to taking laughter yoga. So the next benefit is cardiovascular health. Again, laughter yoga isn't aerobic exercise. We're doing deep breathing. We're maybe getting the heart rate up just a little bit or a lot, depending on the type of session you do. And in Japan, there was a study that they looked at those who rarely laugh versus those who laugh frequently. And in the group of those who rarely laughed, they had a 20% higher risk of developing cardiovascular disease and a 60% increased risk over the frequent laughter group of a stroke, which is very interesting and somewhat surprising. But there is something to be said for having a tool to bring some joy into your life and the effect that it has on your physiology. And there is by the effect of decreasing stress on your nervous system, that secondarily helps with heart health. So going into the next benefit, improved immunity. There are a lot more studies out now. I think the past 5 years have been instrumental with laughter yoga, and there have been over 150 new studies that have popped up, maybe more. That's as many as I found and gone through, that have just started to multiply because we've seen such great results in so many different fields from laughter yoga, and improved immunity was one. And they looked at the improved immunity in cancer patients specifically, and they showed an increase in the natural killer cells. They showed improvement in lymphatic flow. And while some of you may have heard of the lymphatic system, if you haven't, it's a system in your body that it's part of your immune system, but it's critical for detoxification and immunity. And unlike your cardiovascular system, which has a heart to pump things around, your lymphatic system has no pump. So it has to rely on things like movement or a lymphatic massage, which is a type of very gentle massage to move the lymphatic system. But through the laughter and breathing exercises, deep breathing and laughter actually help move the lymphatic system. And there are also self-reports of fewer colds and illnesses in the majority of people that do laughter yoga. They've reported this directly to Dr. Kataria's group, which is Laughter Yoga International. And I myself and people that have been in my laughter yoga groups also noticed the same thing. It's sort of subjective evidence, but now there are more studies coming out that are explaining, oh, wow, okay, well, this is why it's boosting the immune system. And the final benefit that is probably the most obvious that I want to talk about is mood elevation, which seems so natural, right? You're laughing, of course you're going to experience a mood elevation. Laughter yoga releases endorphins. It has a balancing effect on dopamine and serotonin, which can boost mood. And I included a study here, a study done in Australia that showed that there was subjective well-being increase. They looked at individuals that had a lower than average subjective well-being and life satisfaction. Now, there are actual surveys and studies that you can do that test an individual's subjective well-being and life satisfaction. So these weren't people sitting here smiling and saying, life is peaches and roses and laughter yoga is great. These were individuals who did not feel that they had everything going great for them, which they were doing laughter yoga for a reason. And after laughter yoga sessions, they did report an increase in their well-being and their life satisfaction. Now, this was a very short-term study. It only lasted a few weeks, but what they found is when they came back for their next session, their well-being and satisfaction had gone back to the level it had been prior to the week before. And I don't say that to discourage you, but it does show that laughter yoga is not a panacea. And it does take time for some of these benefits. Other studies have since come out and shown that it can take about 2 to 3 months of consistent practice before you start to build up a lot of resilience so that some of these benefits can actually start to take hold. And you may feel great after a session, and then it may come back down for a while. So it kind of a roller coaster, but it does balance out the more you do it. So it's definitely a cumulative effect. Okay, so to summarize, who benefits from this? Well, the medical literature that has been done so far to date has been done on numerous conditions, people experiencing chronic pain, chronic fatigue syndrome, psychiatric diagnosis, as well as some of the other ones that I discussed today, like cancer diagnosis, and a lot of workplace studies and populations with no diagnosis. My personal experience is in the field with those experiencing chronic conditions, specifically chronic fatigue syndrome, multiple chemical sensitivities, all sorts of autoimmune disorders, fibromyalgia, autoimmune conditions, POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, a variety of different psychiatric diagnoses, as well as just general stress. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I haven't seen, or I may not have mentioned in the beginning, I haven't seen a study specific for sarcoidosis. And that's okay, because there is a gal that I worked with recently who is experiencing bipolar disorder, and she was also doing some other things to help her. And she was the first person that was recorded as having this benefit her. So it doesn't matter if the literature hasn't caught up. This is a very beneficial practice for most people. And there's a difference between this isn't for me and this isn't going to, quote, work for me. This is definitely something that is beneficial for the population at large, with or without a chronic condition. And I have found blog posts and other things online for people self-reporting feeling better with sarcoidosis through laughter yoga. So just because the literature is not there yet doesn't mean that it won't catch up, and it might be in time. So definitely don't let this list, if you're like, oh my gosh, I've got this condition and I don't see it on here, that doesn't mean that it won't work for you. It just means they've researched this field. This is where my experience has been. And someone may come along tomorrow and do a study on it. You just never know. So why would you want to do laughter yoga? Well, of course, we just talked about a lot of the health benefits, but it also can help you develop a sense of humor. We're all born to some extent with a clean slate. Nobody's necessarily born with a sense of humor. The neuroscience is very clear on that, as that is also an evolving area of medicine. And a lot of people think, well, I'm not a funny person. I just don't think things are very funny. And that's okay. You don't have to have a sense of humor. You don't have to laugh at lots of things. Laughter yoga can help you develop that. This is a habit. This is a habit you can choose to practice and take with you for the rest of your life. And through that, you can help develop a sense of humor. You can feel a positive shift when challenged, which is probably the most powerful benefit and what I use laughter yoga for the most. Particularly when I was the most triggered, meaning something would come along and it could have been something environmental, something that really stimulated my nervous system or really affected me physically. It could have been the smell of something. It could have been a pollen in the air, just anything. And I would go into a laughter yoga practice when I felt the most challenged, because I knew that's when I needed to use tools the most. Sometimes laughter yoga was not the appropriate tool, and I just had to learn when to use laughter yoga or when to use another tool like visualization or deep breathing. But it's definitely a positive shift to use when you're feeling challenged. And today, now that I am through those chronic conditions, and which is great, I'm so grateful for, and it's wonderful. And I feel almost like a walking miracle some days, but I still use laughter yoga because I still have challenges in life. No one goes through this life without challenges. They just may look different for people. So when I'm feeling triggered by something else, I have this wonderful tool to use. And it gives a focus for something beneficial. We can all get triggered and get stressed. And oh my gosh, I love salt and potato chips. I love to stress eat potato chips. I can also go ahead and choose to reach for something else that's maybe a little in the healthier direction. So it's easy to reach for something unhealthy at times. And if we've gotten in that habit, laughter yoga is something that instead of maybe screaming at the customer service person you're frustrated with on the end of the phone, you take a deep breath, you get off the phone, and you go do a laughter yoga practice. It's a focus in a healthy direction. I have found that it's a really good way to express creative energy. Laughter yoga is extremely versatile, and you can make a laughter yoga exercise out of anything. I've got a timer here. I could set a timer and laugh every time it hits a 5. I literally just made that up. I've got a new exercise now. You can make an exercise out of anything. And the more you do laughter yoga, you might start walking around the house and making up exercises. It's a great way to help you express your creative energy. And finally, laughter connects everyone. My most popular videos on YouTube, and a lot of my counterparts in the laughter yoga arena who have laughter yoga YouTube channels, we all have the same thing, that our most popular videos are typically the ones where they're laughter only, with no talking or very little instruction, because we have people from all over the world watching these videos that some, and a lot of them don't speak English, and they come in for the laughter, and everyone knows what laughter is. You don't have to speak the same language. Laughter is ubiquitous. We can tell if someone's sitting in the corner, well, I don't want to walk up to them and see if they want to do laughter yoga. It might be good for them to do right now, but you can tell when someone's happy and laughing. It needs no introduction. You don't need to know the language. It's something that connects everyone universally, and it's a very beautiful thing. And finally, you might be less triggered in time. And funny story is, I was doing laughter yoga for a long time while driving. Driving was particularly triggering to me back when I was going through a lot of health challenges. It was overwhelming to my nervous system. And I got back out on the Dallas, Texas highways, particularly triggering in metropolitan areas. And I was using laughter yoga to help settle myself. Now, of course, I did it in a very safe manner. I wasn't taking my hands off the wheel and clapping, but I was driving, ha, 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 waving at people who probably thought I was a little bizarre. And the other day, some guy cuts across several lanes of traffic because his exit was way back there. And I thought, of course, for a second, I was surprised. But then I just went, oh, interesting. He missed his exit way back there. Ha, ha, ha. And I laughed it off, and I thought, wow, what a change. 2 years ago, I would have been all over that with crazy expletives and really, really mad. And it just didn't faze me. So in time, you might find things that used to really just get your goat. I love that expression. Get your goat. Really used to tick you off. Suddenly don't bother you that much anymore. So a few guidelines before we dive into the practice. You don't have to feel it. I mentioned earlier, you don't have to feel like laughing right now. And if you want to sit and observe, that is perfectly fine. You can sit back, watch everyone else laugh. You can just get the benefit of watching smiling, happy faces. And if you don't feel like laughing, or you just want to jump in for a minute, that's okay. Definitely, there are some contraindications, which are similar to exercise. If you have a heart condition with pain, if you've recently had a significant surgery within the past few months, those are things you might want to step back from doing this exercise practice. Again, we're going to do it very gentle, but listen to your body. You are in charge here. You know yourself better than anyone else. So do not overexert yourself. And if you are feeling any discomfort, definitely stop. And if you feel like you need to make a call to your doctor, go right ahead. And last but not least is that the spirit of laughter yoga is always one of love and gratitude. And so we never laugh in a mean-spirited way. Yes, I may make a really weird face, and you'll be laughing at me making the weird face, but it's never a laughter of, ha ha, I'm better than you, na 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 na. It's never in a mean-spirited way. And I haven't had this come up in practice, fortunately. So I just want to put that out there, that we're all doing this in good fun, and we're loving and supporting each other as we go along. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into our session.